Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Klondike Gold's first live Q&A webinar. My name is James Kwantes, and I'm the editor of Resource Opportunities. It's an investment newsletter focused on junior resource stocks, and Klondike Gold is one of the ones I cover. I'm here with Peter Tallman, the CEO of the company, Ian Perry, the VP Exploration, and you at home. Thanks for joining us. So we've collected a bunch of your questions to start the conversation off, but please feel free to submit other questions. And if we don't get to them during the webinar, then we'll get to them after. So why don't we start off by getting Peter and Ian to introduce themselves and talk a bit about their stories. Peter, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, how you got to be here?
Well, that's a long story. The quick and dirty, I'm the president and CEO of Klondike Gold. I've been a geo since 1980. I've discovered, or had the pleasure of discovering, a gold deposit, an antimony deposit, and a zinc deposit. And I've also had, over the years, had the pleasure of working with Ian Perry from way back in the dim mists 25 years ago. And so Ian was brought on just recently to help me advance Klondike Gold.
Well, I've had a fairly conventional career, I think, in exploration geology, working mostly with mid-size and major producers. Certainly for the first 23 years, the last last dozen or so, I guess, I was acting as vice president of field services with an engineering and geology consulting group in Calgary.
Okay.
That was a diversion into oil sands when oil sands were fashionable. So.
Right.
More recently, I ran into...
Were they ever fashionable?
Well, more fashionable than now.
Yeah, more economic.
So last winter I ran into Peter, and he thought perhaps I might add some value, and so here I am.
Yeah. Had you been up to the Yukon before?
You know, I've worked in Eastern Canada, from kind of Manitoba to Newfoundland and Labrador, and internationally for about half a dozen years, I guess. But no, never in the Yukon and very little in BC, so it's all kind of new and exciting to me.
Great. Okay, let's jump into the questions. So the first one's from Oliver. Why should I invest in Klondike Gold over other junior explorers? So many choices, so many options.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, junior explorers in general, I'm going to take that down to junior explorers in the Yukon to give it a little bit of focus, I suppose. And even there's a whole range of explorers from companies that are developing or soon to develop a mine, to they've got a resource, to have an initial resource that's smaller and uneconomic, to Klondike Gold. And Klondike Gold is at a stage where we believe there is a substantial amount of gold within our property, but we don't have a resource. And so valuing one versus the other, it's kind of a different proposition, really. But in Klondike Gold's case, really the initial investment is made on the premise that we can make a discovery. And as you know in your newsletter, discovery stories are things that can take a stock from very, very low to very high in a rapid, short period of time. Mm-hmm. And that's really where we're at. So if you're comfortable with the risk, that's really what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah. I noticed just recently that the Minto mine is sort of on care and maintenance now, and the sale fell through. So I think that was the only bedrock mine operating in the Yukon. So it's fair to say that the Yukon's kind of not desperate, but really for a place where mining is so important, they really need new mines. And
well, they have two. Well, Victoria Gold is coming.
Is building.
That's
right.
Actually that was one of the ones I was thinking of as the most advanced.
Right.
So it's in construction right now. They have the financing. They expect to pour gold in a year.
Right.
And the one behind that, I think, could probably be one in our district, which is the ex-Kaminak, now Gold Corp coffee deposit, which is going through the final permitting, and they have the First Nations on board. And so I foresee that going to construction relatively soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
They've been doing a lot of drilling there, that's
yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So that's at the one end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
those two, and we're at the absolute other end of the spectrum,
Right.
still trying to prove, as some of these other questions will show, that,
Yeah.
okay, is there any gold in the Klondike?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's jump to next question. Brian, what is the guiding geologic theory? How has it changed, and what do you see now?
Well, I'll take part of that. The initial, again, from an exploration point of view, and this is where I got initially involved, the Klondike has been explored for 120 years, and nobody's found anything in that period of time up until when we got involved. So either everybody is absolutely right, and 120 years of exploration has been dead on accurate, there's nothing there, or fundamentally they were wrong somewhere, maybe made some assumption and missed it. And so just from an investment point of view, when I came in, it's like, okay, fine, I'm not necessarily saying they're all wrong, but I have to look at it that way. Let's go kind of turn things a little bit and do things differently. Whatever they did for the last 120 years, we're not going to do, we're going to do it differently. And so, again, systematic exploration over the first 3 years documented 40 or 50 bedrock gold occurrences that were unknown. And then we found a couple of different zones of gold that had economic characteristics. And then finally we found a really big zone, potentially, bulk tonnage. And that's all economically interesting and completely unknown previously. So that's where we're at today. And I'll let Ian speak to the...
Okay. Well, I mean, the Klondike obviously is one of the largest placer deposits discovered on the planet, and was one of, I guess, 4 in the 1800s. There's Klondike, well, there was first the California, New Zealand, Australia, and then ours right at the end of 1896, I guess. And those other placer regions have followed a kind of a hand mining when it was first discovered, going to hydraulic mining with water cannons essentially, moving on to dredges, and then straight into bedrock. And because the source was found in the hills around the creeks.
So those ones you've mentioned, they found significant bedrock gold in each of them?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, Oceana Gold is still producing in New Zealand. I think they've been producing for maybe 29, 30 years now. Unlike the California situation, the Mother Lode district itself, the New Zealand deposit its average grade is something like 1.4 grams, 1.5 grams, something like that. And it's been running, like I say, for 30 years. They've produced more than 4 million ounces. So you don't need the Mother Lode grades, like the super high grade, bonanza grade, continuous long quartz veins to make money at it.
Right,
So,
right.
so I think the Klondike is quite unusual in that thus far it hasn't been found. So I think that that actually it was found early on, but not recognized for what it is. Right?
Okay.
I mean, the people were looking for the high-grade veins, and there are indeed high-grade veins there, but they're not continuous for miles
Right.
and as wide as the room kind of thing.
Right, and hard to sort of track.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And then maybe there's probably not one bedrock source, right? Like there's probably multiple bedrock sources in the Yukon, but you guys have the largest land position above the most productive creeks. Is that?
We cover the entirety of the placer creeks with quartz claims, with the bedrock claims, yeah. And definitively, I'm certain that every creek that has gold in it has its own local source
Right.
to contribute to that.
Right.
That the gold is not being parachuted in from Mars,
Yeah, yeah.
as
Well,
has been theorized.
Yeah, what I meant is that
Local.
there's other companies that are exploring above productive placer creeks. Like you have most of the creeks in the Klondike.
Yeah.
But there's others in the vicinity, like White Gold recently had quite a nice high grade discovery at JP Ross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a super good 25 grams over 25 meters.
25 or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't see that too often.
No, and
How do you cut?
they're 50 kilometers south of us.
Okay.
And Coffee, the Kamenak
Mhm.
coffee deposit, is 110 kilometers south of us.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, no, the White Gold district is also known for its placer.
Right,
And
right.
this is now the original discovery that Underworld made, started to explain some of the placer deposits in that district, and I think this new discovery from White Gold explains another portion of their district
Right.
in the placer.
Right.
And again, it's normal around the world. These gold deposits, the placer, the gold in the creeks is not coming from a long way away. It's coming
Yeah.
from just right there.
Right, right. Bit of a riddle. Well, maybe we can talk about, since we're touched on grade anyway, and one of the other, we've got a question here from Brad about grades. So, like you've got a mix of higher grade hits, and then but also like the disseminated, the lower grade gold. And it seems like all the investors want high grade. That's what gets the headlines. That's what makes your
course.
share price rocket.
Yes.
So maybe you can talk about the grades. Are they economic? And what about these lower grades? Some of the grades seem fairly low.
Yeah.
Why does that work? Does it work, and why?
Well, I don't know yet, but that's one of the questions we're asking by drilling
Yeah.
it. So
It's hard to talk about grade alone without also talking about, how far from surface it is, capital costs, operating costs, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah. And you guys have
So-
a big advantage there, the infrastructure,
Absolutely.
the roads.
We're
right
close
outside
to
of
paved
Dawson.
highways, we're close to power, close to people to work in a mine, should one be found. So.
Yeah.
have an airport schedule. Anyway, yeah. No,
Yeah.
the infrastructure there is excellent. Another point is like the metallurgy, which we're working on, but even anecdotally, the Klondike is known. 20 million ounces of gold, it's all coarse free gold. You can see it,
Right.
which means it's free and easy to separate from the rock.
Right.
And so, going back to Ian's point, capital costs we think would be very low if we could find something to go and mine. And I think the operating costs, because it's coarse free gold, would also be really low and easy to separate the gold.
Right.
So lower grade potentially works. Really what we don't know is how low a grade we can go to. And that's one of the questions that we're trying to answer now.
What's your sort of threshold as far as reporting holes? I mean, like.
In terms of reporting a hole at loan, so there's a couple of different things, but investors are seeing the last 2 years of drilling where we focused principally on Lone Star, which was that first target that could be 1 million ounces or more.
Right.
So we've drilled a central portion of that, and that's been our focus. Okay, Lone Star, as it turns out, is probably not the best 1 million ounce target on our property. Nugget, I think, looks, initially anyway, it looks higher grade and bigger. But let's go see what Lone Star has to offer.
Right. So
and
you haven't answered that question quite
well,
yet.
so now we will have, by the time we finish announcing the results from this year, we will have 40 or 50 holes across a kilometer. And so we will have defined a volume of gold mineralization, and we have enough hits in it that I can average it out and statistically look as if it were a resource and see where that grade is.
Okay, but it won't be like a compliant. Like
we're not going to
a
announce
resource
it.
estimate. No.
But so what I've done, there is like about 100-meter wide zone of gold mineralization in there. So we try to average our average intersections go out over that interval.
Right.
Whether we get, and it's funny because you can get a high grade hit in here, and we just had one 10 grams over 4 meters.
Right.
It's only 4 meters within like 100 or 90.
Yeah.
But when you average that out to the 90, it's the same as this next section over, which had disseminated gold, and it was
Right.
low grade all the way across.
Right.
And that swath is continuous and mappable, and it looks nice.
Yeah. And this would be like an open pit
It's
scenario,
open,
right?
all of this is
So you
surface.
talk about grade smearing and so on, but I mean, in the mining process, it's all coming out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't stop like this one. You'd be taking all of this, and then you'd jog up to, okay, that's where that quartz vein that was high grade. And then,
Right.
no, you're taking it all anyway.
Yeah.
And because geometrically the zone itself dips down the slope of the hill, you're never getting very far from surface, right?
Right,
Like you don't
right.
have a big, your stripping ratio would be
Yeah, yeah.
much
Zero.
less than,
Well,
yeah.
stripping ratio is zero because it
At the
sits at
start,
surface.
Yeah, which also helps with the economics. How
Yeah.
many holes this season were at the Nugget zone? Roughly
20.
about 20. Okay,
Yeah.
so mostly Lone Star.
Lone Star Nugget for 20, and then at the end, and again, it comes back to the high grade, low grade thing. We actually, something I really like to do at the end is go and test some wing nut things, right?
You are a geo after all.
Well, and so and we've got some shots at high grade, and honestly, I have no idea. I can't wait to see assays, but we're going to be another month or more. But we took a shot at stuff that could be high grade.
Yeah, we have a prospecting crew that goes out essentially every day from middle of May to end
October,
of September,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
October. And they have a very good record of coming back with gold either from bedrock or from float.
Reverse.
Right. Yeah, and you did a lot of groundwork. Like in addition to the drilling, you did a lot of groundwork this season too, didn't you?
We did a lot of kind of what is normally earlier stage soil sampling,
Right.
regional soil sampling, airborne surveying, that kind of thing, and a regional mapping.
That had never been
program.
done.
Yeah.
Right.
That's another. And
Yeah.
So you've been to our property 3 times over the last 4 years, and I know I complained to you then. There is no geoscience. It's shocking in Canada for a belt that's been around and known for 120 years and it's had 20 million ounces of gold come out of the gravels.
Yeah.
Nobody mapped it
Yeah.
in any form, and so we kind of did
Why?
that.
Why? Like,
I have no idea. It really kind of boggles the mind. But anyway, so I kind of did this year. I've told this to some significant investors. One of them is upstairs here. I basically did a regional geology mapping, structure, lithology, soil sampling, geophysics program, plus prospecting by stealth, while over here, we're drilling. And because primarily shareholders don't really like
yeah.
that.
Well, you did announce
kinda.
it. I remember when you announced it.
But yeah,
The
but
work, yeah.
I mean, so and it's borne fruit. We found we now have a way better idea of the geology, the constraints, the mineralization, where the mineralization might actually be, and we can use that proactively, I think. And in fact, that's part of what the prospecting has been doing this year.
Right.
And we found, I don't know, I mean, it's dozens and dozens of new showings. And some of them are absolutely spectacular, high grade, really high grade. So what that looks like when we drill it, who knows?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of high grade there too. That's going back to your original question. High grade, low grade.
Yeah.
We have both. It's easier right now to define low grade to get to more than 1 million ounces. I want to get to 2 million ounces as an objective.
In the first resource estimate, or
Yes.
2 million in the first resource
Yeah.
estimate? Okay.
But then we do have, even at Lone Star, if we take that as an example, that 100-meter interval of what we announce as low grade and pull it in a little bit, it increases the average grade, but we lose ounces.
Yeah.
And it's a trade-off. We don't know where that is.
Do you have enough information to estimate what the grade of a 2 million ounce deposit there might look like?
Industry rule of thumb,
Yeah.
rather than what we have.
Sure.
But we're using a 0.3 gram cutoff for the mineralization, and you need at least 2.5 times that as your average grade. So
Okay.
0.8 grams and up
Right.
is what I'm looking for, and I would prefer any number above that. And as high, obviously, as would every investor
Yeah.
going. Okay, but whatever. The objective isn't to get the highest average grade here, because what we're trying to do is outline a multi-million ounce resource and sell it to a major. The major is going to buy it and pay $100 an ounce in the ground for every single ounce we find. And so they're paying for all that low grade, all the stuff that looks nasty to an investor, we get more money for.
Right.
And so I'm
As long as they
somewhat
can make money on
apolitical about that. It's like, okay, I'm happy for every ounce.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll let them worry about mining it.
Right, right. But then, like you've been around long enough to know that, like shareholders, like they like love the high grade, and your stocks
The
come.
bling, yeah.
Yeah, your stocks come down a little bit. So, like, do you watch that? Are you concerned about that? Is it on your radar? How do you?
I know it's certainly on my radar, but trying to get to the hurdle of what are we at, what economic constraints are in this belt,
Yeah.
is of more importance. So after we
Right.
release this whole year of drilling, we will have drilled Lone Star, we will have drilled a good bit of Nugget, we will have some other things on some of the other structures that we've identified.
Right.
At that point, I can mix and match next year's program
Yeah.
to maybe deliver some more high grade that people want to see, whilst developing
Advancing it
ounces.
systematically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your news flow, how long will it run?
Oh, we're
Do you estimate?
into January.
Right into January. Okay.
And we have to blame white gold. Hello, white gold.
Clogging up the assay.
Yeah, no, they did well. So it's been, a complaint every year. It happens, and it's good for our assay lab. But now that the boys have made a discovery, we've been submitting 2 tons of drill core every day since we started in May. So
Okay.
every working day into the lab,
Wow.
and we see the job numbers. So every day ours go in.
Oh, it's
and
tracked
then,
online?
and it's a number.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, I
they
see.
every job gets a number
Right.
from that lab. So right now, okay, we just submitted our last ones, but we'd submit 5 or 6 job numbers, and then there's a jump of 40 or 50 to the
Okay.
next day.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's them, those darn guys make. And so it's just, the lab itself is overrun at a time when they're reducing staff,
Right,
because it's
right.
after the summer. And anyway,
Blame Sean.
I am.
This is kind of off script, but you've been up in the Yukon for a while, in the Klondike for a while, and there's like so many fascinating characters up there. Who's your favorite Klondike character
Oh.
historically?
Hands down, Anton Stander.
Okay.
And I've
And who is
taken
he?
you
Yeah.
to his fireplace. So Anton is the discoverer of gold on Eldorado Creek, and he made that placer discovery 2 weeks after the original discovery in Bonanza Creek. And Anton Stander is completely disregarded to the point where, Parks Canada and everybody else up there don't know where his cabin was. Anyway, so we found his fireplace that was in the back of his cabin, and it's a fantastic little place right on Eldorado Creek. And he has a long history, long and sad. He was the 4th richest guy to come out of the Klondike, and ultimately, got married, got divorced, lost all the money, lost whatever he had after the divorce back to the wife, and retired a pauper in an old age home in Alaska. And so over the
Bittersweet.
time, I've learned a lot about him, researching
Yeah.
and found photos in the archives in Alaska and Yukon and in the States.
Yeah. And was his cabin on your ground?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I go by it every morning and say, "Good morning, Anton,"
You
and
pay
on
homage.
the eve, give me some luck, because he found multi-millions of ounces of gold sitting there at a time when Eldorado Creek was just this mud creek that was, nobody thought there'd be anything in it.
Right. Right. Okay, so let's go to the lightning round. So these are 5 quick questions, short answers.
Okay. Good
when,
luck.
when do you expect you'll need to raise funds?
We have $2.5 million allocated and in the treasury now for next year, 2019. However, I think based on the results we have, I'd like to spend $4 to $5 million. So sometime in the spring of 2019, we'll make a decision as to how big a budget we're going to have and how much, if any, we want to raise in addition.
Right. And would it be a traditional financing, or are there other options that you can explore to prevent dilution?
I think it's going to be a traditional
Yeah.
financing,
Okay.
simple, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, number 2, will good news drive the stock price up?
It normally does.
I guess what is
and
good
bad
news?
news?
What is good
Yeah.
news, I
Yes.
guess, is the real question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but yeah, does it, that's on a good day, then yeah. On a bad day, when you announce results and somehow something's happened and the market is cratering, then no amount of good news is going to drive
Yeah.
anything anywhere.
Yeah, it seems
Who
like a lot of
knows?
money is sort of flowing to the high-profile discovery plays in the sector.
Yeah,
to some
and,
extent.
And we're not there yet,
Right.
and that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, number 3, will you drill any deep holes? Because
So
most of the mineralization is shallow, right? So
It's
I think
all
we had a
surface.
question. Yeah, we had a question as well about drilling deep holes just to see if there's some really high grade stuff.
Well, on the
feeding.
theory that most of the gold in the creeks came from something that has been eroded,
Yeah.
or is in the process of eroding down, there's no real requirement to go deep at the moment, and especially if the grades that we're encountering, certainly in the Lone Star area, look like it will be a lower grade, bigger tonnage kind of play. Again, there's not really any need to, at this particular stage,
Right.
to go a long ways beneath the potential floor of a pit or something.
Okay.
So Frank Juster has been after me for a couple of years to drill deep holes.
Oh yeah.
And I've had a concept. We had 2 kilometers worth of deep holes proposed as concept. Now that we've actually done the geology and the regional look at it, I would change those.
Okay.
And I'm glad I didn't drill them because they would have been blank.
Yeah.
And so, and now contemplating other things, yes. I mean, it's been a contemplation for a while, but all the gold we know about is on surface. Ultimately, we will be drilling deep
Right.
holes. When? No, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you've said that your objective is to identify a deposit and sell it to a major. So what's the timeline to the first resource estimate?
We're on the same track as Kaminak was. From discovery, if you look at the timeline for Kaminak, and we have it on our own PowerPoint. So from here, what I see is what we need for a resource estimate is a minimum of 100,000 meters of drilling to produce a legitimate, coherent resource estimate that a major might accept. To do that, we need drilling in 2019 and 2020. And it may be possible by using the 2020 drilling to have a maiden resource in 2021, early 2021 based on that. But I would also like a minimum of 2 million ounces if cows fly and that's there. And doing less than 2 million ounces as a maiden resource I don't think would do us any good either. So it's going to be a trade-off race to the grand total as fast as possible, as always, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of meterage will you be at after this? Like as of now?
We've done 25,000 meters now.
Okay.
So we have 75,000 meters to go.
And you're going to do that in 2 exploration seasons?
We can, yeah. We have a constraint. We haven't. You've been to our camp, and it's constrained, so we can comfortably do 15,000 meters out of our own camp. And to do more than that, we need a separate camp. So we've applied for permitting for it.
Oh, okay.
And we can expand. We'll have that by, I expect, mid this coming summer, 2019. But really, it'll be 2020 when we get rolling with that. And that's exactly what Kaminak did. They parachuted big drills in, lots of, 10, 15 drills. That's what we're looking at for
Right.
2020.
Okay, that's about all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your questions. And thank you, Peter and Ian.